Welcome, everyone. I'm Neil Hadra, CEO of the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. As a townie myself, I know how lucky we are in Washtenaw County to have families who've dedicated themselves to this community for generations. Our community foundation carries on these traditions just as we seek to actively engage more and more members of our community in local philanthropy. Although some community foundations engage in geographic expansion to grow, I am proud that our Board of Trustees has committed to serving only Washtenaw County. We have transitioned some existing funds and turned down some potential new funds that are outside of our geographic mission footprint. We believe this hyperlocal focus on the area where we live and we work allows us to be the best option for donors who are committed to this community. This commitment to Washtenaw County is what brings us together today. When family foundations decide that they do not want to continue the work of operating as a private foundation, often during generational transitions, the family foundation trustees can distribute out all the assets through final grants, or they can continue to impact their community by transitioning their philanthropy to donor-advised funds. We are so pleased that local families since the Sarns in 1990 have chosen to transition their family foundations to the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. The Buhr Foundation has been one of the most visible funders in Washtenaw County for many decades. Rather than transitioning to a commercial donor-advised fund, such as the national ones through a Fidelity or Vanguard, we are so honored that the Buhr Foundation trustees chose to remain focused on Washtenaw County and establish donor-advised funds with the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. Donor-advised funds, or DAFs, have been in the news a lot lately, with stories of DAFs hoarding money and not granting out critical funds. We at the Community Foundation are not gatekeepers to our DAFs. We do respect the wishes of our advisors regarding these funds when they wish to remain anonymous or not be solicited for funding. And we also actively engage with our advisors to promote philanthropy in Washtenaw County. We take very seriously the responsibility of being the legal donor of record for all of our donor-advised funds. Our DAFs are not only active, they in fact collectively grant at a much higher rate than what is required of private foundations. That's all to say we're so fortunate to live in such a generous community that keeps on giving. While Washtenaw County has many impressive legacies, today we are celebrating the Buhr family legacy. It all started with the Buhr Machine Tool Company, which was established in 1925 and made specialized machine tools for the automotive industry. That spirit of entrepreneurism continues locally through today. You might have noticed the list of patents from the company's founder, Joseph F. Buhr, during the opening slides. The company endowed the Buhr Foundation in 1953 to honor and memorialize him. As a member of a funding institution, I want to commend the Buhr Foundation's longtime commitment to Washtenaw County and to their smart approach to philanthropy. They have formed deep and lasting relationships with nonprofits as witnessed by all of the audience that's with us today. They've made grants not only for capital projects, but also for operating support. We want to uplift that general operating support rather than funding for specific programs or with severe strings attached is critical for a thriving local nonprofit ecosystem. As part of the Buhr family's commitment to Washtenaw County, Jamie Buhr, a trustee of the Buhr Foundation who served as treasurer as well, has been engaged with the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation for decades as a volunteer and as a donor. In fact, Jamie not only served as a trustee of the Community Foundation, he also spent many years on our investment finance committee, among other engagements. Having known us so well, we were so grateful that Jamie was always a strong connector between the Buhr Foundation and the Community Foundation. Even so, Jamie over the years was always quick to point out that his sister, Martha Buhr Grimes, or Marty, was the leader of the Buhr Foundation. I'm going to ask Jamie now to say a few words about Marty and her presidency of the Buhr Foundation.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. Almost 100 years ago, our Buhr ancestors were lucky to wind up in Washtenaw County, especially our beloved Ann Arbor. During that time, we have been truly blessed to be in a position to appropriately give back to the community in order to celebrate our good fortune. And hopefully I'm not stepping on any remarks that Marty might make here, but the Buhr Foundation was established in the early 1950s, and its asset base was the result of the successful sale of two companies, the Buhr Machine Tool Company in 1968 and the R&B Machine Tool Company in Saline in 1998. The foundation was initially managed by Joseph H. Buhr and the likes of Wilbur, Pierpont, and Robert Johnson. In later years, the four Buhr children were added to the board and were complemented by the addition of Phillip J. Bowen and Ann Arbor's philanthropic consigliere, Dell Dunbar. It is that team, along with the input from the next generation Buhr children, who have led the foundation for the last several years. As a current trustee generation of the Buhr family, my sister Marty, my brothers, and I knew that we wanted to continue to honor our father and grandfather's commitment to Washtenaw County. The Buhr Machine Tool Company was based here, and we wanted the company and family funds that now comprise the Buhr Foundation to stay local. As Neil noted, I knew from many years of service that the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation knows Washtenaw County. And I also knew that they valued the deep connections and relationships that my sister Marty, as president of the foundation, had formed since she assumed the presidency in 1986. Marty was a phenomenal teacher, including many years at Green Hills, and she brought that scholarly application to philanthropy. Under her leadership, our foundation transformed into a professional foundation that conducted site visits and sought to learn and understand the great work of nonprofits in this community as more than just a funder. Just as she cared for her students, Marty cares for the people and the organizations of this county. She has worked tirelessly to help make a difference, and we can all be grateful for her many contributions. So let me close with these final thoughts. In 1986, it was time to name a formal leader to the Buhr Foundation. Fortunately, we named our sister to take on the role of president, and it turned out to be a very wise decision. She has led us into the 21st century with better record keeping, more efficient analysis, more timely communication, expansion of focus, and ultimately appropriate and optimal decisions. So it is with that list of accomplishments that I proudly introduce the president of the Buhr Foundation, Martha Buhr Grimes.
First of all, thank you for attending this celebration. We truly have been overwhelmed by this reception. Our dad used to say, nothing is forever. And while this statement has some truth to it, my brothers and I have found a way to continue the good work of the Buhr Foundation long after we're gone. The Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation will ensure that our donor advised funds will continue to offer support to the community we love. It has been an honor and privilege to serve as president of the Buhr Foundation since 1987. I have been assisted by a terrific board, my brothers Rick, Jamie, and Tom, and mentored by four outstanding non-family board members, the late Wilbur Pierpont, Robert L. Johnson, Phil Bowen, and of course now Dell Dunbar. My husband Bill has been a valued aid and support at our home foundation office too. I treasure these relationships and the connections I've made over the years with the caring folks who lead or administer the organizations we have helped. As well, I forever hold dear the memories. And while every grant we made was important and meaningful, I would like to share three that especially touched our hearts. The first is our grant to Stevens Theater. Young Stephen Easter died in a tragic canoeing accident on Lake Michigan when he was only 8 years old. His classmates at Voss School decided to honor his love of singing and drama by raising funds to construct an outdoor theater on the hillside of the field across the street from their school. Scores of lemonade stands cropped up around the neighborhood, and entrepreneurial kids pulled weeds, mowed grass, raked leaves, did household chores, or shoveled snow while their parents held garage sales and bake sales. When we learned about these endeavors in 2014, we wanted to help by providing the funding to complete the project. The celebration at the dedication of Stevens Theater was so moving and filled with love, a testament to what a community can do when it cares for one of its own. A second grant was to a food bank at New Beginnings Lutheran Church in West Branch, Michigan. Yes, not exactly located in Washtenaw County, I know. In early November 2015, I received a handwritten letter from Wesley Scheidegger, a young man who identified himself as autistic. He explained that his mission was to feed hungry families, and to do this, he managed the food bank at his church. He wondered if we would consider a grant to help out. How did Wesley find out about the Buhr Foundation? We didn't have a website, even though our second generation kept urging us to get one. He may have found us in the listing of the Council of Michigan Foundations. Well, obviously, I could not make a site visit, but I did Google the church and I found that it did indeed exist. I made copies of Wesley's letter and took them to our fall board meeting when we traditionally make grants to provide food and gifts to organizations in the community. After reading Wesley's letter, the board decided to make an exception since West Branch is not even close to Washtenaw County. We approved a grant of $1,000 and I sent the check in Wesley's honor along with a copy of his letter to the church secretary. We received a wonderful thank you from her telling us how very meaningful our grant was to this young man, true validation for his mission and his good heart. A third grant in 2019 resulted with the only visit we ever had to a foundation board meeting. My son Joe asked if we could have a visitor who would make a demonstration. I said yes, but had no idea what was about to occur. About 30 minutes into our April meeting, a woman accompanied by a young boy, about 9 years old, appeared outside our boardroom. The boy was dressed in suit and tie and carrying a half mannequin torso and what appeared to be a suitcase of some kind. The boy's name was Lucas, and he had brought along a Stryker Lucas 3 chest compressor system. Lucas had been to a fire station presentation in Howell, Michigan, and learned that a Lucas 3 chest compressor could perform CPR and was more efficient than a human EMT who would tire after 2 or 3 minutes of this strenuous effort and need another EMT to take over. In addition, when underway to a hospital, an ambulance, an EMT performing CPR on a patient was unable to be strapped in due to the position he or she had to take in the moving vehicle to perform CPR. So Lucas decided he was going to fundraise to provide all 24 stations in Livingston County with a Lucas 3 chest compressor system. He already had raised $6,000 toward the $16,000 cost for one, and had a charity golf outing scheduled as well as a presentation before a medical conference in the coming weeks. Using his note cards, he made his presentation demonstrating the Lucas compressor on the mannequin, and then he packed up his equipment and he and his mom left. Well, it was a slam dunk. We granted $10,000 to fund his first Lucas compressor, and in a fit of extreme generosity urged by Brother Rick, we approved additional funding of 50% for 2 more compressors, since 2 of the 24 Livingston County fire stations abut Washtenaw County, and we were pretty sure some of our residents would benefit from a Lucas. My mother used to say that we took from the last generation what we should give to the next. During World War II, our grandfather funded the bandshell programs at West Park. Buhr Machine Tool Company gifted the city with the land that is now Buhr Park. After Grandpa's death, the Buhr Foundation was endowed in 1953. We Buhrs grew up with generosity as a given. In turn, my brothers and I have given our children the gift of philanthropy. Several years ago, we brought them onto our board as our second generation. This has resulted in a number of grants that they brought to the table to help fund the following: the Miracle Field in Plymouth, Michigan, upon which Washtenaw kids with special needs can play baseball; a van for North Star Reach, a camp for chronically ill kids, many from Washtenaw County; a Milo system and a HAL mannequin, which are teaching devices used by Emergent Health, part of HCA, to train future EMTs and possibly save your life; a hybrid operating room at Mott Children's Hospital, where a critically ill child can receive every kind of care he or she needs without having to leave the room; and the Lucas chest compressor system, to name a few. So no worries, Washtenaw County. The next generation and their children will continue to guide us, and they to us, and we and they will administer our donor advised funds. Thus, we will be able together to continue to care for the community we love for years and years and years.
Thank you, Marty. My name is Betsy Petoskey, and as of this month, I'm now the chair of the Community Foundation. I also have the privilege of knowing Marty and Jamie through Pioneer High School and many other community organizations, including being a proud townie myself. Both on behalf of the Community Foundation Board of Trustees and as a Washtenaw County native, I want to thank the Buhr Foundation for continuing their local philanthropy through the Community Foundation. I know nonprofits are curious about how the new Buhr funds at the Community Foundation will operate. We will share more information in the future as we can. I want to affirm what Neil said earlier. Donor advised funds can operate anonymously, and we honor the privacy of our advisors. We live in a generous community, and one where people are often very humble about their giving. Unlike what you may hear about on a national level, we're proud that our donor advised funds are active. I can assure you that current commitments of the Buhr Foundation will be honored and that the Buhr family will continue to make an impact. Today is not about the new funds. It's about the family, and especially the leadership of Marty Grimes for decades as the Buhr Foundation president. I know that everyone on the call has tuned in to visit with the Buhr family and with each other. So we're now going to have some short interactive group discussions and then join back together, where we'll also all have time to share thoughts about Marty and the Buhr Foundation and family. Enjoy visiting, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
All right, well, welcome back everybody, and just scrolling through here to make sure, yep, all three groups are back. So I hope you all had delightful conversations. I know we did, and we're gonna do a few things now. We would like to hear from each group on sort of the main aha moments or epiphanies you may have had in your group discussions. And then after that, we're gonna open it up by either, identifying yourself in chat or raising your hand if you have a few things you wanna say to Jamie, to Marty, to the Buhr family, or on behalf of your organization to the Buhr Foundation. But why don't we start with Betsy's group? She was the discussion leader, and I'm just gonna reiterate the question. And by the way, here's the three questions, and I want you to understand they were general, but I want you to think about why we chose these three for this particular celebration. One question was, what makes Washtenaw County's philanthropic sector special? The second question was, how do families engage across generations in giving back? And the third question was, how can people engage meaningfully with nonprofits? And if you're thinking of a certain family when we pose these questions, mission is accomplished. So Betsy, I don't know if you have someone assigned from your group to report out, but your group had the question, what makes Washtenaw County's philanthropic sector special?
And Judith is going to report for us.
Yeah, okay. So I would say, having fundraised, well, our group said that one of the things that makes it different is that donors have such wide-ranging interests. They don't seem to be in one little pocket. If someone gives to Arbor Hospice, I can be almost certain they give to the Symphony. I can be certain they give to the Neutral Zone. There's a wide interest in the community. And then another member of our group said that they are distinguished in that they go beyond just giving money. They give time, talent, and treasure, but they do it to an exceptional degree. And I would say that this has been our experience too. They not only give you money, but they become involved with what you were doing. And that's unique.
That's great. Really appreciate it. And again, I've watched the Buhr Foundation for 20 years. I've been in the nonprofit sector, and what you just described is exactly how they've operated, right? All this time, from the personal connections to the wide range of grants they made. When Marty was sharing with me and some others the list of grantees, I thought, man, this is like a who's who of the stalwart nonprofits in the community, and not limited by one particular area of activity. So I love the connection and the reflection there. So I'm going to move on to, actually, we did put one of the beers to work. Jamie was a discussion leader for the second question. And Jamie, I don't know if you or someone from your group is going to report out, but the question assigned to Jamie's group was, how do families engage across generations in giving back?
So I don't know if one of our group members wants to step in. I'm thinking of Lori or somebody like that, but why don't I just make a general comment and see if somebody wants to chime in as well. We didn't have as much time. We didn't recognize we should have been talking sooner rather than later, and we were chatting about some other stuff. But clearly, not everybody has a platform like a family foundation in terms of engaging younger people. But I think there was agreement that setting an example and involving young people, friends and young people in your activities where you're actually giving of your time and going and doing it, as well as making sure that that your kids know the charities that you support, why you support them, that sort of thing. And I didn't do this with our kids, but I have grandchildren that I'm thinking of doing it with, and that is, if they wind up getting an allowance or something like that, you can read a lot of articles where people talk about, a third ought to be for fun, and a third ought to be for saving, and a third ought to be for a charity, and that sort of thing. And even little 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids, especially if they see your example, can really be motivated at an early age to start thinking about, number one, how blessed they are, and number two, that there's a lot of people out there that need help.
Yeah, so I can just add on since from your group. We were so grateful to have Jamie and Marty in our group. So we spent a lot of time just sharing our own stories of how they made an impact and got to the question at the very end. But we did talk a lot, and Marty and Jamie really emphasized the importance of really showing up and going out to do site visits and being a part of the community. And yes, including young people into that process, which, I think it is about not, in order to make it go across generations, is to be very participatory and to be involved and to be active. So I think that's the highlight. Jamie, how did I do?
You did great. Thanks very much.
Well, listen, here's the best news of the afternoon. Everyone gets an A. So I just want to put that to rest for you type A personalities who need to get the good score. So actually the last group, I was the discussion leader, but the indomitable Roy Muir has agreed to report out on the group's conversation. And the question that we posed was, how can people engage meaningfully with nonprofits? So Roy, I'm going to hand it off to you. And you're on mute, Roy.
Right after you said that everybody else had an A, then you handed off to me. So see where we go. Yeah, this was a really good discussion. Most of the people who are on the board, on the discussion really were representing nonprofit organizations. And so they were talking to the group about how can the nonprofit organizations reach out and engage a lot of volunteers, donors, and their constituents in the life of the nonprofit. And obviously, one way is to start by being sure that from the nonprofit's point of view, they are communicating, they're telling their story, they're picking up the phone and calling their donors and their volunteers and talking about their goals and objectives and talking about their vision, and just being sure that they're not making assumptions that everybody out there always is fully informed and up to date on what the goals, objectives, and current agendas of the nonprofits are. From the flip side, from the volunteers' point of view, we also talked about being absolutely sure that donors and volunteers reach out to the nonprofits, ask the questions. What's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest goal? What are the things that you really want to see happen this year? And how can we be helping? So from each side, stimulating dialogue and back forth. In my experience as a fundraiser, as a volunteer, as a donor, I found that almost every organization and every philanthropic organization is open and eager to talking about what they're doing, what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, and whether or not there's a way that donors and volunteers can play a role in helping with that. One of the other things that we talked about was being sure you simply get out there and visit. Whether we're talking about food gatherers or whether we're talking about Peace Neighborhood Center or wherever it is, go see that organization. Stop by and say hello. Walk in and understand what's happening right now. I mentioned that right now Peace Neighborhood Center is going through a lot of physical transformation. A building that was built with donor money 30 years ago, it's getting a little tattered, and so they've taken all their furniture out, ripped up the carpets, and there's volunteers in painting it and getting it back into great shape. But a lot of that's just being done by people who are getting hands-on participation in what's happening there. One of our great participants, Dunbar, commented on how important it is from the donor side to hear from nonprofits and from recipients, seeing those personal notes saying, here's what your gift did, and here's what it's doing in our community, and here's why we thank you so much for your gift. So we had a great conversation, and actually at the very end, the timer shut Dell off as he was in the middle of of some great conversation that was going back and forth. It was a great spirited dialogue. Thanks for getting it on.
Well, hey, thanks, Roy, for that great report out. So listen, now for the last few minutes we're together, I'm going to play traffic cop. You have a chat function in Zoom where you can raise your hand or even just type in hand into chat. And you've heard a lot from me and our board chair, Betsy, and from Jamie and Marty, but would love to just open this up, because really the point of this is to recognize the incredible impact across generations of the Buhr Foundation and the Buhr family. And we know a lot of you have a lot of experience with and relationships with that family. And we want to give you a voice too, if you so choose. And actually I'll start with Dell, because I saw Dell go off of mute. And Dell, I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yes, actually, just a note to comment to Jamie and Marty. It was actually 53 years ago this month that I worked for their father. Joseph H. And I just want them to know that he would be very, very proud of what they've done over the last 20, 25 years. The one thing to know about the Buhr Foundation is, unlike some other private foundations, they have always greatly exceeded the 5% payout. It's never been a question of self-sustainability. It's always been a question of where can the money do the most good, irrespective of what the limitations might be. And I think that's particularly unique with the Buhr family, and I thank them very much for that philosophy.
That's what an amazing perspective, Del. Let's go to John Weiss next.
Thanks so much, Neil. Just great to be on the call. Great to see old friends like Del. Great to see you, Del, and Steve Dobson, and meet some new people. I think Lori probably heaped a bunch of praise on the Buhrs for all of the contributions they've made to the neutral zone. Also just want to uplift something in my local community. I've been a Ypsilanti resident for 26 years. And as many of you know, we rebuilt Rutherford Pool and just recently redid the bathhouse. And of course, the Buhr Foundation was at the table, almost first ones in. And they have just been so incredibly generous. And we could not have done both of those projects, both the pool rebuild and the bathhouse facelift, without them. And as so many people said, they're just so personally engaged. I know I could always shoot an email to Jamie or Marty and get an email back right away, and they were always at the table. So I'm just incredibly grateful and hope to see you in your swimsuits this summer at Rutherford Pool.
Bet you weren't expecting that. I see Bill just put his hand up, so go ahead, Bill.
Sure. I just wanted to say my experience with the Buhr Foundation. I called Jamie many years ago when we were raising money for an elevator addition to the Riverside Arts Center. And I think he wisely said, you really shouldn't be talking to me. You need to talk to the cultured person of our board, which is Marty. And so he put me in touch with Marty. Marty was very supportive, helped out with the elevator addition, and more importantly, became involved with Riverside Arts Center. Contributed a lot of her time, got involved in the board. She helped us with fundraisers, taking tickets. She was really boots on the ground, and I really admire that. But on the good side for Jamie, past being the non-cultured person, he really has committed himself to the homeless need in the community with the Shelter Association, all that he's done with that. I really admire that. I admire everything that the Buhr Foundation has done. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Bill. And I'd welcome other folks to jump in. I'll just make an observation from my perspective. Now I've been 10 years at the foundation. You know, Jamie Buhr is up to a lot of different things, but he helped build the modern foundation in terms of how we invest and the financial model. And, you know, he doesn't go around bragging about it, but when you're on the inside looking out, you start realizing who's spent a lot of sweat equity building the foundation into what it is. And that's sort of one of these quiet accomplishments that the Buhrs don't talk about much, but have made an immense and will continue making an immense impact on the community. I'm looking for hands, but while we're waiting, I wanted to read a few of the comments. So we got Frankie Moore saying, I've got a chatty baby in the room, but just wanted to say that the Bryant Community Center, CAN, is so grateful for the generosity of the Buhr Foundation. Whenever we walk into our beautiful new building, we think of your family and it brings a smile to our faces. Thank you. And I see Alex's hand has just gone up.
Thank you. Yes, Alex Tuska here from Eversight. The foundation has supported us most recently. Eversight coordinates cornea transplants and we're based in Ann Arbor. It's been such a pleasure to get to know Marty through these last 3 years and to hear how your foundation has impacted the Ann Arbor community, learn more about that history today. Just hats off, job well done. And we look forward to continuing to follow your legacy. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to read a comment from Lisa. And again, feel free to raise your hands or put a name in chat. Deepest thanks to all the Buhr family for all of your commitment to and support of the community. You have created an amazing legacy. Does anyone else want to jump in? I think I saw a hand go up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say to the Buhr Foundation, I've only been with Arbor Hospice for 6 years, but in looking at the record, it appears that your organization built both the original residence and the recent residence 6 years ago. And I just did some research this morning, and I just want you to know that you helped 5,000 people find a compassionate care at the end of their lives. So thank you.
I do want to reiterate, when I got into the sector, I was really struck by how the Buhr Foundation made a lot of non-sexy grants. And you think, well, that doesn't sound like a compliment, but I'm telling you, that's the best compliment I could give any of the foundations that are active in Washtenaw County. They put the money in the places where most donors wouldn't gravitate, right? Capital projects, facilities and buildings, operating support, the kinds of things that most nonprofits have trouble securing. And here was a foundation, in my knowledge, for the last 20 years, but I know it goes longer back than that, that was already at the forefront before that was becoming a movement or a thing within the foundation field. So there was actually a lot of foresight and vision by the Buhr Foundation way before most foundations were engaging that kind of support. And Paul, is that a hand?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sitting in my office at Green Hills School and struggling to hear you over the noise of the kids outside my window on the new field, renovated athletic field. Today, we're back in school, so kids were in the dining room, in the library. These are all things that the foundation has helped us support, those capital projects that you talked about. And the foundation's been with us for 3 of our 5 decades, supporting us every step of the way. Marty was a beloved faculty member here. You were always there for us, and we are so grateful and so proud of our association and that we've earned your trust. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Christina, go ahead.
Well, I kind of mentioned this on our breakout, but I think it's worth repeating. It's the interest. It's not just the support, the monetary support. It's that personal interest that has just been so uplifting for us at St. Louis Center. And I think it's just the most perfect thing that, this is now going to be managed by the Community Foundation, the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, because I feel like you have all worked very hard to build these relationships with us. And it is such a pleasure, and it is so helpful to us from, on the nonprofit end, to be able to know who we're working with, to know what things are important to you, and just kind of like, that there are people on the other end of it. That is so meaningful. So I just want to say thank you to Marty and, the Buhr family, and I'm excited that the relationships that we've been able to build will continue. That's really nice.
Thanks, Christina. That's awesome. Susan, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to, echo many other comments that I'm hearing here to say thank you very much. And when you mentioned your point of the, the non-sexy grants that people put out there with organizations and things, I think about the funds that support United Way and how we utilize them in the community to do some really interesting things and, supporting equity, opportunity, housing, and food, and all these other things mixed together, and that we would not be here in order to do all of that work if it wasn't for every single gift we get, especially during COVID last year. We always thank all the donors who've been there in the past because they built up our strength to be able to be there for the future. On a non-United Way note, on a personal note, I saw that you guys supported Make-A-Wish, and I saw you did it several years. I just wanted to say thank you for that because my daughter is a wish recipient, and I think a wish may have been granted during one of those years that you were supporting them. So thank you very much. She's perfectly healthy now. Rough few years, but she's doing great. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. That's awesome. So listen, here's the good news. This is a celebration, not a farewell. So walk on down to Zola. I'm sure you'll see Jamie there at some point. I'm told walk on down to the Viking Sewing Center and you'll probably see Marty. buying some more fabric so she can make masks and send them to Central America, right, Marty? So we're really excited that the Buhrs remain active. They're going to be here for a long time. And we want to thank all of you for joining us in celebrating the Buhr family, Buhr Foundation, and the Buhr legacy. Specifically, Jamie and Marty, thanks for your time and your comments today. This is certainly not the end of anything. Actually, it's simply a celebration of a transition. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you, and we'll be seeing you all very soon. Enjoy the warm weather.